Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Future Ready Workshops, Tips to Being a High-Performing Remote Employee. We will be starting shortly. As part of NUS's Lifelong Learning Initiative, this series of workshops is aimed at supporting you in your lifelong learning journey and equipping you with useful workplace skills to excel in your career. Some important points to note before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available on NUS Alumni Relations website within a week of the event. NUS Alumni Relations and its event partners may use some or all of these images or videos in their publications, digital platforms, and/or marketing channels. For security and personal data protection purposes, participants' video and audio will be disabled. You are invited to post any question you may have throughout the session on the Q&A feature. Your question will be reviewed by the administrator and may be grouped with similar questions to be answered. You are also encouraged to upvote or like questions posted in the Q&A platform to increase the visibility of the questions you would like the speaker to answer. Without further ado, let us invite our speaker, Mr. Jasbir Singh, Trainer, Center for Future Ready Graduates, to begin this evening session. Jasbir, please.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Let me just share my screen and get all the applications organized nicely. Once it's in full screen mode, let me just pull over all the Zoom options from my other screen. Okay, I'm gonna pull over the Q&A little thing. Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And last but not least, okay, good, I'm ready. All right, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. Kenneth, thank you for the introduction. Florence, Samuel, and the OER team, thanks for organizing this, and thank you all very much for having me. So it's a privilege to be here. Today we are talking about a very exciting topic, working from home. I think many of us have been knee-deep into it. And I just want you to just bring yourself back to maybe when you graduated. I know that when I graduated, the idea of working from home was a real privilege. It would be super cool to be able to go into the office when you wanted to, when you didn't want to stay home and work. It sounded really idealistic. And then COVID-19 hit, circuit breaker went hard at us, and suddenly it wasn't as rosy as it seemed, right? Especially during circuit breaker when all our kids, if you have kids, were at home, parents were at home, everybody was in one house trying to get things done, and it became a little bit stressful. So today we're going to try and unpick, or rather look at some of the lessons we learned from that. I have got a point of view on how to work effectively from home. That's my job in this situation. But at the same time, I'm sure you have all been there, done that over the last 2 months quite successfully. And so along the way, I would love to hear your point of view as well, and what has been effective for you. And by the end of the session, a lot from each other. So maybe I can just say a few words to just introduce myself a little bit. So as Kenneth mentioned, I'm from the Center for Future Ready Graduates. For the more recent grads, you might know that that's the NUS Career Services. We take care of ensuring our students are in a good place to land a job and hopefully do well in the workplace as well. So we've got two kinds of programs, the programs that address the job search concerns, and programs like stuff that I run for the center, workplace traits, emotional intelligence, soft skills. So in university, I do a lot of those workshops and webinars. I also teach a couple of modules with the psych department around life skills and workplace skills called the Roots and Links series. Now, before joining NUS, I started my career actually as a practice trainee lawyer. And early on into my legal career, I was brought into an opportunity to go into consulting. So I went there and I was a consultant for 5 years with an MNC called Heidrick & Struggles. We were a leadership advisory firm, and our job was to assess talent in businesses and identify who the future leaders would be, and then put them on developmental programs so that they could move up the ranks, and succession planning was well taken care of. So my job was really to do leadership development work before I came into NUS, and I've been here for the last 3 years. So let's jump into the session proper. So today, I want this session to be as interactive as possible. I think while it is COVID, while we are remote, we can still engage as much as possible. So there's a Q&A function on, if you see the black bar on your screen, sometimes it's at the top if you have to hover around that green icon, or sometimes it's at the bottom. You'll find a Q&A function. So if any time you have a question, just drop it there. Occasionally I'll launch a few polls, so just join in, let's see what everyone says. If you have a point of view on what I'm talking about, if you want to share an idea, share a resource, share an experience, just drop it into the chat, okay? And lastly, there will be a couple other activities which I will just throw out, maybe using a QR code. Just join in, it'll be fun, okay? And I will periodically, after every other section or so, stop for questions. So typically questions are at the end, right, at 9 o'clock or 8:50. But I'm going to try and space it out so that we can take questions and just have a discussion throughout the day. Okay, so we've been at this for a couple of hours now, sorry, a couple of months now, working from home. What are some of the challenges you have faced? Maybe you've overcome them, good for you, or not. But what are some of the challenges you have faced? Let's just surface them by scanning this QR code and answering the question that prompts on your phone. And let's see what everyone has to say. So if you can just take a moment to grab your phone, turn on your QR code scanner. I'm sure by now all of us have that with the safe entry and all that stuff. And drop in one word only. You can answer 3 answers, but using one word only. What are some of the challenges you face? Maybe it's productivity, maybe it's your sofa, maybe it's your children getting in the way of your productivity while working from home. Let me see your thoughts. Okay, good. I'm seeing a lot of the answers coming in. I'll just wait a little while more to receive a few more before I share the results with you. Okay, so yeah, if you don't have a QR code, you can't do it. You can, of course, drop your thoughts into the chat. So I'm seeing some people put in the chat longer working hours, more distractions, work overload. Yeah, totally, right? People don't know how to set, well, colleagues sometimes don't know how to set boundaries. They think that you're home, you can do it fast. And sometimes we ourselves feel obliged that, hey, you know what? My workspace is just there, my laptop is just there, let me just check. Yeah. Okay. So let's jump over to the other screen. 1 minute. Okay. Let's see what you all are saying. So you should be able to see the QR, the word cloud on your screen. So a lot of people are talking about productivity being an issue. The biggest one here is distraction. A big one is motivation. Okay. Interesting. Because of course it's hard to motivate yourself when the Nintendo is right there or the couch is right there, right? Boundaries, setting boundaries. I'm guessing it's a mental boundary to when you should work, when you shouldn't work, and a boundary physically as well. So we'll look at how we can address some of this today. Time management, creating a routine. Okay, yeah, some of the genuine challenges there. Isolation, totally, especially if you are maybe not married. And I had a colleague, right? He's a great guy. He's engaged, but his wife and him, or his fiance and him, different addresses, so they stuck by the rules. They completely didn't see each other for the whole month or so, 6 weeks. It's tough, definitely tough. Focus, okay, good. So I want to try and bring us to solve some of these issues, or not say solve, but at least leave the session feeling empowered to overcome some of these challenges. Overcome some of these challenges by a few approaches and a few solutions that I would like to offer all of us. And I mean, I think based on your responses, right, we've got 4 or 5 challenges that are really plaguing us. I mean, I didn't see it come out on the chat, I mean, on the word cloud, but to me, anxiety was a real issue. Anxiety was an issue because, you know, you're working from home, you don't communicate with your boss too much. I'm like, okay, does my boss think I'm slacking? How do I manage that? To me, that was an issue for me. I'm not sure about you guys, but like all of you said, distractions are an issue. Feeling overwhelmed because people keep giving you work, or there's a lot more work to be done. That isolation, productivity. So, the first thing I want to say to everyone, you know, let's not be hard on ourselves, right? I think we think our colleagues are being awesome at this. We think that our colleagues are really good at working from home, and I'm the only one who's not. But what I learned through speaking to my colleagues is that I wasn't the only one. So now sharing with you guys, I want you to let you know that even I was in this situation, right? Distracted, lazy, the couch is beautiful, the Nintendo is right there. You know, yeah, that was basically my first week of working from home. And slowly we figured it out, right? Slowly we figured out our own way. And I figured out one solution, which I'm really glad to share with you today. And I call it the home approach, which I've kind of come up with. And firstly, it's getting our heads in the game. That's the whole productivity piece. How do we get focused? How do we be productive at home? Contributing to the productivity at home is also that physical infrastructure that we need to facilitate our actions. working from home isn't just a laptop. Sure, you can use a laptop and squint your way at your 1,000-row Excel sheet, which I think a lot of us started off doing, or we can figure out a way to optimize and create the ideal home office to make it comfortable and an enjoyable experience. But not to forget, it's not just about producing work, right? Unfortunately, work is also as much about people management and people relations as it is about actual product. And that's about managing people around us, so managing our relationships with our colleagues, managing our relationships with our bosses, managing our expectations with our subordinates or teammates. And finally, if you're client facing, or how do you engage the public? How do you engage your clients remotely? So that's the few things that I want to try to address today. Like I said, along the way, if you have any thoughts, questions, drop it into the relevant platforms. So let's start with productivity. How do we get our head in the game? And I think there are three things, right? One is knowing when you can work best. Two, figuring your own startup ritual, I like to call it, to get our heads in the game. And lastly, deploying our whatever productivity hacks work for us. So let's talk about the productive hours, right? There's three things at play here. One, each of us differ in when we work best, and that's the beauty. So work from home doesn't have to be all bad, right? Work from home is also going to give us the chance to pick the timings that work best for us. I don't think I take that back. I have a ex-client of mine. He moved to a new company, and that company, his boss is quite pedantic, and the boss actually required them. This is a bit of a media journalistic company. The boss actually required them to have their webcam on Zoom all day so that he could have instant communications with them. All the staff read that as active monitoring, and that was really bad, right? But for the most of us, we're fortunate enough where no one's really checking about the timing we work as long as our work is getting done. And so it's a chance for us to identify our best hours and leverage that. It's a chance for us to pivot and adjust to when our family needs us, because I think all the parents in here would appreciate that it is mentally and physically impossible to work when your child is banging on the door. I mean, okay, that's really bad that I don't know her age. She's 2, she's turning 3 in November, and I've also got a 6-month-old. So it has been fireworks at home, at least during the circuit breaker. Once schools reopened, things got a lot better. And I think a lot of you had that experience too. So we've got to figure out what time your family needs us. And at the same time, what time do your colleagues need you? So with these three things into account, we can then pick out the best working hours. And I think it's really important to do that. So I want to help with that. By sharing with you some research that's come out of Stanford psychologist Daniel Pink. If you haven't read this book, it's a great book. It's definitely it's like a productivity Bible. It's one book I definitely recommend to all my undergrads that are graduating and my postgrads that are graduating. They say, look, Jasbir, what do you recommend us read before we start a career? I recommend this book and a couple others, which I might bring up later today. And this, in one part of the book, he talks about, so the whole book is about timing, about timing being the key to success, productivity. Of course, it's not the only key, but he's looking at it from success from a timing angle. And previous books that he wrote was success from a motivation angle. So that was about why, right? So now he's talking about when. And in this one, so he talks about chronotypes. Are you guys familiar with the concept of chronotype? I had to Google it, right? And chronotyping is basically the idea that we all have a inbuilt or conditioned preference for when we are most effective in terms of productive, in terms of focus, in terms of creativity, and a preference for when we sleep, when we rest, and when we are also lethargic. So the common words that you might recognize, I'm a morning person, I'm a night owl. That's what we mean by chronotypes. And your chronotype can impact your performance. And according to his research, the time of day accounts for 20% variance in performance. Surgeons operating when they were in the dip zone, so according to your chronotype, we all have a dip zone where we are not productive, were found to have significantly more medical negligence cases arising from operating in that dip zone. Drivers driving heavy machinery in that dip zone also are found to have more accidents in that time. So it's really interesting to figure out when we are the most productive. And let's do this. There's a very simple way we can figure out when you and I are most productive. So here's a quick experiment. I want you to think about what time you go to sleep. All right, so if you go to sleep at 10, and this is not This is in a natural situation, so not a work situation or not a holiday situation. Pardon me. This is when you have no obligations the next day. You're not getting up because you have to. It's just natural. So maybe it's a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, or you've had a 1 week long holiday and this you're rested generally, and there's nothing obliging you to get up any earlier or any later. So naturally speaking, if you were left to your own devices, what time do you go to sleep? What time do you wake up? And what's the midpoint hour? Right? What time do you go to sleep? What time do you wake up? And what's the midpoint hour? Can you all just do that quick mental sum right now? What time do you go to sleep? What time do you wake up? And what's the midpoint hour? Okay. So I'm going to just launch a poll, and I would like you to answer the questions there. So, and basically tell me what time is your midpoint. So you should be able to see the poll come up on your screen right about now. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I will share the results once I have about 50 to 70% of the votes in. I've got about 20% right now. Thank you very much for your participation. What's your midpoint hour? Okay, I've got about 55%, that's fine. All right, I'm going to share. So for the most of you, your midpoint is between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Okay, that's interesting. And then quite evenly split. Half, 1/3 of us are, or rather, okay, my math is very bad, but 18% of us are 3 a.m. or earlier, and about 19% of us are 5 a.m. or later. Most of us are 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Okay, interesting. So I'm guessing most of you go to sleep around midnight. Great, great. So what does that mean? So if you were 3 a.m. or earlier, you are going to classify as a morning person. Typically, you wake up early in month. If you were 5 a.m. or later, you would classify as a night owl. And if you were in between, so for the 60% of you that were in between, you would be, what's the phrasing for that? Third birds. According to Daniel Pink's lingo, it's a third bird. So morning people are classified as larks. It's a kind of bird, I guess. And then night owls are, you go owls. And the in-betweeners he refers to as third birds. And so according to the science of chronotyping, morning people and third birds share a commonality in terms of productivity patterns. We start off at peak. We wake up and we're at our best typically. Of course, after you had your coffee and whatnot, you typically at your best. You can be very focused. You can do high levels of analytical work. Maybe if you are in policy, you need to scour through a lot of research. Okay, that's the time to read, take in information. If you are writing reports, that's the time to write. If you're an investment banker and you've got to crunch some numbers, that's the time to do it. If you're a programmer and you're coding, that's the time to do it. Least mistakes. And you hit the 12:30 mark, you've had your lunch, I think you all relate to this, you will dip. And that's when, highest number of accidents happen, medical malpractice, all that stuff. And that's the time I say when we are in that dip, where we should schedule the things that take our attention away when we're working from home, right? So what takes our attention away from working from home? Chores, household responsibilities, meal prep for people, kids, delivery men coming in or repairmen coming in. That's the time to do it. Exercise, also a great time to do it when we are at a dip. Sometimes for me, I work through my dip, and I'll tell you why in a bit, because of my other obligations with my family. My kids end school at 3:30, so I kind of need to finish before then. I work through my dip, but I try to my best to schedule either I schedule a class that I teach or I schedule a meeting, because I find that when I'm facing people, like in a webinar, like a class like this, or if I'm in a meeting, I have no choice but to psych myself up to be my most charismatic self. So although I'm a bit sleepy at that time, I will bring the A game because I have to. People are watching me. But if I was left to my own devices and I was reading, I was doing research, I'll be useless. So I'll schedule stuff that would force me to pick up. And teaching, unlike being a surgeon or a lawyer, doesn't have huge consequences if I say the wrong word every now and then. So that's what I do to keep myself productive, even though I'm in a dip. So the question is for you guys as well. How can you make use of your dip time to do the other things that are distracting you while working from home? Sometimes email is a good time for that. And for the For the recovery time, 4 p.m. to 7:30, that's the time where we get a second wind. It's like a second boost of energy. And that's why a lot of people actually end up working late. So if you're going back to when you're working in the office, you find that, at least for me, okay, I don't want to generalize it, but at least for me, I was super awesome in the morning. Then I had that crazy dip before I read this book and then changed some of my behaviors. I had that crazy dip. And then suddenly at 3:30, 4 p.m., I suddenly feel more energy. And then I'm like rushing to finish by 6, but then I'm like, oh, I'm in flow. I don't want to end by 6. And then I end up working late. And that's the time where we have the second wind. And it's a time for us to do creative tasks. We're not at our peak to do the high functioning analytical work. But for me, I do workshops, I do digital content for workplace skills. That's time to do creative work, thinking about concepts, thinking about what I'm going to present. If you're in UX UI, that's the time for you to conceptualize, design. You can code later. If you are a lawyer, maybe it's a time to bounce off and brainstorm trial strategy or negotiation strategy, rather than the actual written submissions to the court. Depending on what work you do, that's the time for your creative work. Now, similarly, if you're a night owl, you will dip at the same time. So everybody has that dip, but you start off in recovery. So recovery is a bit of I don't think it's the best term, but the idea here, it's not your most focused time, but it's still a good time for you to do creative work. And then you go into your peak. So I think knowing your chronotype, knowing your best timing can help you then choose what your best hours are. So for me, I'm a morning person. So I start my day early. I start at 6 and I start working at 6. And I end my day by 3:30. Today is an exception, so I hope I don't fall asleep by the end of the day. But because I know I'm a morning person. I also know that, the other things I have to be in consideration for are my family. They need me at 3:30, my kids. So my wife is a doctor, so there's no working from home for her. So she goes to the clinic and the hospital. I got to pick up the kids from school at 3:30. So that's what I do. So at 3:30, I pick up the kids from school, from childcare, from infant care, and then I'm with them. And then I know that sometimes my colleagues, by 9 to 3, they've gotten me. I check my email once at 9, because I wake up at 6, I check again at 9. I don't check at 6, I wake up, do my productive work at 6, so I don't get distracted by other people's interests. At 9, I give my colleagues time of day. I'll check my email, see what they need from me, and then I'll do it again maybe at 2 o'clock before I end off at 3. And then if from 3 to 6 they need me, okay, they would have emailed me, and I'll just check again when my kids are having dinner, or they've just gone to bed. I might just do a quick email check and address whatever needs to be addressed. Whatever it is you choose to do, whatever works for you. I mean, figure out the formula, right? Your best hours minus the time your family needs you, minus the time your colleagues need you, and you figure out what slots, what windows of work you can do. Communicate it. Communicate it to your colleagues, communicate it to your family. That makes things easier to get you in that focus. I think you will find that by having a Sunday evening conversation with your partner, the people that live with you about, okay, this is what time you're working, they'll trouble you less than if you didn't. Now, that's about getting us to produce at our most productive time. But even though we, know that we're productive in the morning or in the evening and we plan our workday accordingly, sometimes it's just hard to get started, right? Do I work in my pajamas? Do I work on the sofa? And so I want to encourage all of us to build a startup ritual. Why? And let me just launch another poll if you will indulge me. And I want to know what your relationship is with your morning commute. So for when we did go to the office, and some of us have resumed going to the office, and I think the morning commute has gotten a lot more bearable because the traffic is reduced. But what is your relationship with the morning commute? Some of us obviously are like, you might absolutely hate it. You're always stuck in traffic. For some, it was a really powerful time. It was a time that you planned out your day, right? You're on the bus, you're on the MRT, nothing to do. You just think about, okay, this is my to-do list. Some of us go. You can choose multiple questions. You can answer multiple options, right? Some of us use the time to plan, and then also you visualize. If you practice, some of the positive psychology around visualization, that's the time to do your visualization and let things flow. And you imagine your presentation, you imagine that meeting as if you're succeeding in it. For some, it's time for me time, right? Netflix, maybe phone calls with friends. Sometimes some of you it's productivity time, right? So podcasts. One of my favorite YouTubers and podcasters, his name is Ali Abdallah. I'll show you a video from him later. He talks about how podcasts changed his life. It feels like he listens to podcasts on the commute at 2x speeds, and he's actually working towards 2.25x, and he's going to slowly increase the speeds so that he trains his brain to capture information faster, and he gets the exposure to more information at the same time. So so podcasting. Some of you have the chance to use the morning commute to chat with your partner. Now, suddenly, when you're working from home, you've lost that morning commute. So that planning time is gone, that visualization time is gone, the me time is gone, the learning time is gone, the kids' time is gone. For those of you who hated your morning commute, okay, good for you. But for the rest of the people who didn't really hate it and saw some benefit in it, we need to do something. And that's the benefit of the startup routine. The startup ritual allows you to get the benefit of what you used to have in the morning commute without the hassle of the movement and the traffic. So what is this potential startup routine? So if it's about planning your day and visualizing how it pans out, then train yourself to don't just jump into the work. Train yourself to slowly, the moment you wake up, don't touch your laptop, don't touch your phone, just go and have your coffee and plan your day that way. If it's about time with your kids and their work and catching up with them, okay, do that. If it's time for you to exercise, do that. Either way, it's a chance for you to transit from your home life to your work life. You know that after you have done this, then work life begins. It's a signaling. Think about it, right? Sometimes I think that there's a lot of social psychology research around rituals and habits and patterns. We may have eaten a huge breakfast, but by 12 o'clock, when we're on campus or wherever we are, we walk by the restaurant, we suddenly remember, oh yeah, it's lunchtime, and then suddenly we get hungry. So it's rituals have an impact on our mental state, and having your own startup ritual can help you create that nice transition from home life to work life. Now, if you're a spiritual person, I think a lot of spiritual teaching talks about using the ambrosial hours, the early hours to do your prayer and get your focus right for the day. And that's part of the startup ritual from a peak performance point of view. And for me, that's why I get dressed to go to work. So, of course, I won't dress up. I'm not wearing a suit. I think if I was doing this in person with you, I might put on a blazer. But I'm at home. I'm in jeans and I'm in a shirt. And this is my everyday office attire. I will still wear jeans. At least it's jeans. It's not shorts. I'll wear a long sleeve shirt. I'll still tie my turban properly. And to me, that act of getting ready first thing in the morning is part of my startup ritual. The next part of my ritual is making a cup of tea, sitting down with my cup of tea, and then making my to-do list for the workday. And that's how I get my head in the game. And at the same time, the last thing, many of you talked about distractions. And so there's many great productivity techniques and tools that I would strongly encourage all of us to look at and figure out what works for us. I personally, I swear by two things in this list. This is just a non-exhaustive list, and there are many great YouTubers out there that talk about productivity, and you can check them out. And if you like, I can recommend some in Kenneth's email to you after this workshop. I'm assuming Kenneth will email you some post-workshop stuff. But I believe strongly in the Pareto principle. I believe that we've got a lot of things on our to-do list, but there's only 20% of them that really create the biggest reward. So if you're not familiar, that economics principle, right? The Pareto principle, where 20% of the nation controls 80% of the wealth. They did some research and they found that in coding, 20% of the code consists 80% of the errors of the code. In sales, 20% of the clients result in 80% of the sales and the revenue, that principle. And so I believe that strongly as well. There's a lot of little things to do, but 20% of our tasks and our to-do list actually constitutes 80% of the biggest impact. There's another book that borrows a similar principle about the one thing. If you can choose one thing that is going to create the greatest value for you each day, what would that be? And that, to me, gives me a sense of focus. It's so easy to be distracted by the many emails that come through, the many pings that come through. But if I just remember what is the one most important thing today, I'll focus on that. Once that's done, everything else comes into place. The other thing I like to do is the Pomodoro technique. So, and that's good with my kids. So when we were doing circuit breaker, or even if I do have to work after I pick them up, sometimes I have to, right? I have this timer, and I actually bought the Pomodoro timer. So if you guys remember, the Pomodoro technique is a technique that talks explicitly about using a timer, a Pomodoro timer that's shaped like a Pomodoro tomato. If you go to the pasta restaurant, you'll find Pomodoro pasta, penny Pomodoro, whatever. It's a type of tomato, right? And there's a tomato kitchen timer that you can wind up. It goes tick, 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 and then cling after the time. And so the Pomodoro technique is about using short bursts of focus, so 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, and then a long break. So 20 minutes focus, 5 minutes short break, 20 minutes focus, 5 minutes short break, 20 minutes focus, 5 minutes short break. So with my kids, that works super well because they would see me wind down and say, look, or at least not my kids, my elder daughter, the 2.5-year-old, not the 6 one, he doesn't really care. She would see the Pomodoro going, and she'll know, okay, I can only disturb Dada, or she calls me Dada, when the bell goes. And so then we'll play for 5 minutes, and then I'll say, okay, darling, I'm going to time it again, and we're going to go. So when she'll obey the rules, and then she comes to us and says, no, still going. Okay, 5 minutes to give her undivided attention. And that's how it works. So you can go and I'll send you a video I made. I made a video about the Pomodoro technique, so I'll share that with you after the class. I really like it. So figure out your own productivity hacks, leverage them. They are beautiful. At this point in time, I'm just gonna invite anyone to ask any question. You can unmute yourself if that's allowed. I don't know whether it's allowed on this platform because it's a different mode. Or you can drop it into the Q&A box. I'll be happy to take any questions at this point in time. So far, we've only talked about productivity and getting our heads in the game of the HOME, the home technique, getting our heads in the game. Any questions on that note? I see a question from B. Kun. Will we be able to access these good resources? Yeah, so I will, what I'll do is that I'll make a list, okay? I think Kenneth is probably going to email you guys something after the class, maybe some survey or whatnot. So I will send you a note with some of the YouTubers that I suggest, some of the productivity hacks you can follow. I've made a few videos myself. I'll share that with you. Books wise, I'll add a list of recommended books for you guys as well. Okay. How about naps in the afternoon dip? Yeah, sure. So I recommend the naps to my students, but not a long nap, a power nap, 20 minutes. So in studying techniques, if you want to remember information, according to some textbook I read in cognitive science, cognitive psychology, back when I was an undergrad, and I've applied that since, and it's worked like a charm, is that if you study a concept, don't just read it, right? You study, you make a mind map, so activate different parts of your brain, not just reading, but also physically making the mind map, because with the mind map, you actually see the connections. And then after you make the mind map, take that 20-minute power nap. At the back of your brain, there is something that's happening that lets you remember that information better. Why? Well, I'm not sure there's any neural activity that's impacting this, but what is logical to me is that typically when we do work, when we study, I know you guys are not students here, you guys are probably working, but when we study, we read one paper, we make the notes, and then the next minute, we start and read the next paper and make the next note. And to me, that just lays over. We need to give our brains time to simmer, solidify the memories, make the connections. And so I think the naps can do that. So I passed my bar, I passed my law degree, because after every chapter of mind mapping, I would take a 20-minute nap. I'm a strong advocate for naps, but please go and do your own research about the power of naps. But yeah, I think Yi-Chan, Daniel Pink also has a lot of research about how to use breaks to your advantage. So if you don't have the privilege of doing a nap, you don't have the time in your schedule, oversleep, a way to overcome the dip is to take a movement break outdoors, social, that is not involving work. So there's 4 or 5 principles. And he did this in a study, he looked at a study of Danish school children. Half the children were given exams in the morning, half the children were given exams in the afternoon. The afternoon group did as badly as students who missed 2 weeks of school. That was the dip in action. But the way to mitigate that, let these children play in the playground, before, and their performance comes back up. That's according to Daniel Pink's research in his book. And so movement breaks help mitigate that dip. Okay. Question from Sir Chun. I manage a team. Oops, it's moving. I manage a team. It keeps moving. Okay. All right. Sir Chun. I manage a team and I need them to follow working hours. Is it hard? Else it's hard for discussions. Am I being too rigid? Sir Chun, I mean, maybe you can offer some flexibility where there are some mandatory working hours because you need the discussions, and that's very fair. But allow as well for flexibility insofar as, everyone has different home challenges, right? Some have kids, and the kids will not let them work. Not all of us have a private office at our houses. Not all of us have space where you can call it off. A lot of us work at our dining table. Our kids are there, right? So you need to allow for that, and then you need to allow for the exigencies that happen at home. Your home, there's a delivery man, there's a broken washing machine. You're using the aircon all the time. The aircon breaks down. It's been happening to me all the time. I think you just need to create some space of flexibility. Maybe you can create a system where, okay, guys, everybody, depending on how big your team is, maybe you can find one time that everyone can commit to. Maybe a good stretch where you can all commit to being around for each other, and then allowing 2-3 hours of flexibility per person accordingly. I think that'll really go a long way in demonstrating to your colleagues that you are empathetic to the challenges of working from home, because they generally are challenges of working from home. And that autonomy that you give them to manage their time outside of those core 4 or 5 collaboration hours will give them that trust that you have of them and that kind of motivation boost. So, Sir Chun, I really encourage you to try it, and let me know how it goes, please, after you've tried it. Okay, another anonymous question. This should be the last question for now. Otherwise, I'm afraid I might run out of time. There are too many channels of communication: Skype, WhatsApp, phone call, and email. How do we focus on the task when your colleagues or boss will use one of the channels? So I guess different colleagues use different channels, right? I totally understand. I think it's important to know who's important. So, and what their styles are. So I have communicated, and we'll talk about this around in the topic of managing up, HOME. But I have communicated to my colleagues that I prefer, if there's any to people that work with me in terms of a team basis, they might report into me or they might just be collaborators with me. I will say, look, guys, let's use Microsoft Teams. My Skype always doesn't work, so I'll miss your messages. And WhatsApp is personal. It's my personal space. I said, look, I'll just say, look, guys, I don't check WhatsApp, because if I check WhatsApp, I'll check my Instagram. It's on my phone. I make up that excuse to say, don't bug my personal space. And they're okay with it. And so I said, and so we check Microsoft Teams. But I have also created a norm in my working culture that I don't check it every minute. If I'm working on something, I'm working on it for an hour, for 2 hours, and then I'll reflect Teams. For emails, I'll check email every 4 hours or every 3 hours. But Microsoft Teams, I only check once every hour or so. So I think it's important to communicate with people you're working with. So if you have your boss, of course, your boss might require more instant replies. But I think on Microsoft Teams or on Skype, whichever you use, they can tell when you are busy, depending on the calendar that you have set in Outlook. So if you set, okay, let's say I'm preparing for this class, I'll put preparing for workshop in my calendar. And so if someone texts me on Skype or Teams, they can see that I'm busy. They don't know what I'm doing, but they can see that. And that gives them a bit more empathy to appreciate that I may not reply immediately. And when I do, I'll just say, hey, sorry, was knee deep in preparing for my deck. I didn't see it till now. How can I help? So yeah, I hope that answers your question to the 4 of you who upvoted that anonymous attendee question. Yeah. Okay, I'll just take one more that has been upvoted. I'm a late sleeper. What is the best time for me to start my work? So look, Fai Wong, if you have the flexibility to really manage your own hours, and you don't need to be awake with your colleagues at 9 a.m., then I think you can create what works for you. You can probably start at 9 and 10, and then take a break when you're starting to feel the dip, and then you know that most of your work hours come after 3 p.m. to maybe about 9, 10 o'clock. Yeah, so you got to, I wouldn't say completely start work at 3 p.m. every day, because then you might miss the whole workday. You're probably working London hours instead. And that may not be healthy in terms of your social relationships when your friends are free in the evening, or your family. So I might say, yeah, you have the flexibility, then go for it. Because remember, you want to do both. You want to have creative hours and you want to have focus hours. So focus hours come later in the day, but the creative hours still come when you first start. So it depends really on what kind of work you're doing, Fai Wong. Okay, if I have time, I'll come back to the rest of the questions, but I don't want to yeah, Mingo, I just saw a quick one. Is there a best time for exercise for night owl? Yeah, exercising your dips. Unless you're talking about like body performance and stuff, which I have no idea about. If I take a step back, you will see that I'm not in shape and I'm not in any position to advise on exercise. But from a productivity or a work point of view, I would say exercising your dip, you'll come back more fresh and energized. Okay, I like answering questions and I'm very excited to do that. Julia, I will send you a video about the Pomodoro technique, which I have made. Okay, I'm going to minimize the Q&A and I'll come back to it at the end of this section. So now let's go on to another fun section about the workspace. So for all you techies out there, you might like this very much. It's a chance for you to spend some money and get the right tech to optimize your working environment. But when you talk about workspace, there's three things I want to talk about right now. One is the concept of friction. The other one is how we customize our home office. And then the other one is what's current to today. This is optimizing for Zoom. So my favorite YouTuber, sorry, not my favorite, a good book that I read, and one of my favorite YouTubers also talked about it, is this book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Some of you may have read, if you're interested in productivity and performance, you may have read another book on habits called, it's a Charles Duhigg book about habits. I forget the name now. If anyone knows the name, put it in the chat. It's by Charles Duhigg about habits and how it's formed. Atomic Habits is another good one. Some people say it's even better. And the concept here is that your environment shapes your behavior. Your performance isn't just your motivation, isn't just your discipline, it's also your environment. And so if there's behavior that you want to facilitate, can you reduce the friction between you and that behavior? So if you want to work in your home office, can you make your home office so beautiful that you want to be there, thereby reducing the friction between you and work? If you don't want to play Nintendo, can you increase the friction between you and the Nintendo? Maybe you disconnect the HDMI cable or you hide the thing, so it makes it inconvenient, right? So I have a video that I want to share. Ali Abdaal is my favorite YouTuber. He talks a lot about productivity and stuff along that. So let's just tune into what he has to say.
We don't often think about the physical environment that we live and work in, but it's probably something we should pay more attention to. As James Clear says in Atomic Habits, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. And although our internal motivation and discipline is important, ultimately it's the environment that surrounds us that most determines whether we'll find it easy or hard to build and maintain the habits that'll help us live happier, healthier, more productive lives. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Ali. I'm a doctor working in the UK, and today we're talking about environment design. Because whether we're at home or at school or at work, the physical environment around us has such a ridiculously big impact on so many different things. Like intuitively, we think that if we want to be more productive or we want to build a healthy habit like eating healthily or playing a musical instrument, or in my case, trying to get hench like Zac Efron, intuitively we sort of think that we need more motivation or discipline. But actually, there's an easier way to do all of those things, and it's all about the power of friction. I've got this pet theory that is entirely non-scientific, but I think works reasonably well if you want to be a productivity grease monkey, and that is that friction is the most powerful force in the universe. And unsurprisingly, environment design is one of the best ways to leverage its power. So we can think of friction as the force of resistance in the gap between intention and action. Like, the intention is I should practice the guitar, and the action is actually practicing the guitar. But in between that, we've got this friction, and friction is what causes all of the problems. So overall, if we want to encourage good habits, we should reduce friction, and if we want to discourage bad habits, we should increase friction. So that's kind of the basic premise of environment design. It's all really about increasing or decreasing friction in intentional ways. And for me, the biggest way that I've done that in my life is sleep. So back in the day, I used to make the terrible mistake of taking...
Okay, so you can. I will link this in the post-workshop email, and you can have fun watching it after. What I've just done on the chat, by the way, is that some of you have shared comments on the Q&A platform. So I've just transferred them over to the chat. So if you've got a comment to make, you want to help. Hey, Betty, good to see you. Thanks for sharing about the book. Sorry, I'm distracted. Betty's my friend. Anyway, so some of you had put comments on the chat, on the Q&A, so I'll just transfer them over. So if you have a comment to share, drop it on the chat platform. But yeah, so going back to the environment design, that's what we're talking about here, and how you can reduce or increase friction for the work that you do. So I'm curious, all right? So given the concept of friction that I've just thrown at you right now, use the chat function, and I want to hear you share with me what are some ways you can think of right now to increase the friction between you and the unproductive task or distractions in your home environment. So go to the chat function. If you go onto the black bar of this Zoom thing, you just click more, and in the 3 dots, click more and then click chat. You'll find the chat function. Yeah, Andrew, good one. Thank you for that. Don't work in the same room as your bed. Yeah, so I want to hear some responses in the chat. I want to see some responses. What are some ways to increase friction between you and unwanted distractions? So don't work in trim with your bed. Totally remove distractions from your view, put them in another room. Silent the phone. Totally put phones further away from myself during work. Yeah, totally. My phone is here right now, but it's face down. But there's some literature that says that in doing a cognitive task. So that was the literature. Doing a cognitive task, 3 groups. No phone, totally out of the way. Phone screen up, phone screen down. The group with phone screen up did the worst in the cognitive task. Group with phone out of the way did the best. And the group that with the phone face down, even though the phone was face down, you still did worse in the cognitive task because you were distracted by its physical presence. Okay, interesting. So yeah, so you're talking about putting the distractions far away. Have a comfortable chair to start with. So I think that one is about reducing friction, right? You want to enjoy being there, make your work desk so cozy. Allow sunlight, set time limit on Candy Crush, set time-based targets, interesting. Close the door of the room when working. Okay, good. And for those of you who haven't replied, the next question is, what are some ways to reduce friction? So some of you have addressed the reduction of friction by talking about the nice chair, and I bet you're talking about the secret lab chairs, right? Everyone is crazy about secret lab chairs these days. Making your workspace full of sunlight, some greenery. Yeah, I totally agree. This really reduced friction, makes it such that you want to be there. If you're lucky enough to have a large enough living space and you can have a separate workstation from your living room, that's a great way to increase friction, right? Your living room has so many distractions, so many people, so many objects. Yeah, have a separate one. Nikunj Makaria, great point. Increase email notification timing. So the timing between when you check your emails, brilliant. Some of the literature, Tim Ferriss, from the author of the 4-Hour Workweek, says check emails twice a day. I think he does it 12 p.m., 4 p.m. I've tried to do that now. I do, like I said, 9 a.m. in the morning because I start my day at 6. First 3 hours is just from me and my own work that I deem important. And then after 9 a.m. I check the email, and then again maybe around 1, 2 o'clock before I end the day at about 3 something. P. Jeyaratnam, be very selective on the webinars that you attend, and you found this one interesting. I'm glad. Interesting doesn't mean good, so let's see by the end of the session whether you found it a valuable use of time. Shangdi, use a ergonomic table and chair. Yeah, I'm speaking to you from a standing table, and I'll tell you why. I mean, great. I'm glad that you're applying your minds to it, and I'm glad that you're all sharing wonderful ideas. So fantastic. Yeah, blocking quiet time in the calendar, Tai Sian, great point. One brilliant way, I read an article in the Harvard Business Review in 2014, is this concept of you can read it on the slide. I'm not going to try and pronounce it in French. If anyone can explain how it's pronounced in French, please put it on the chat. I'll appreciate that. But the idea here from like culinary school is that when you're a chef, and any of you who cook, you want to have all the ingredients ready before you start cooking. You don't want to make a scrambled egg and let's say your scrambled egg has eggs, cheese, chilies, maybe some milk. You don't want to have the egg cooking and then go and cut the chilies at the same time or grab the milk. You want to have everything cut ready, so you just have to pour, stir, fry, pour, stir, fry. Everything is ready, so it's easy. No mistakes, very efficient. And that's the idea of mise en place. I could have pronounced it wrong. I have no idea whether I did it properly or not. But it's a great way to spend the first 10 minutes of our day as well, to reduce friction between tasks. If I know that today is about doing research, I might want to have the existing papers and the books on my table. If today was about making a video, okay, I want to organize all the footage that I've collected over the last few days, put the folders nicely, so that when it's time to do the work, it's easy. So the first 10 to 20 minutes is about getting stuff organized, getting all the materials I need, so that I can move quickly and efficiently and not have to switch. I'm getting distracted here, but in terms of productivity, our minds cannot multitask. And when we switch between different cognitive tasks, so if I'm making a video or preparing a report, writing a slide deck, that's a cognitive challenge of content and whatnot. And if I suddenly switch from the flow of creativity of content and I switch to research for content, it's a switch in task, and my mind takes 20 minutes to refocus. So just be mindful, and that's why this idea of accumulating all these things is really valuable. I'll put the link or you can just Google this, how to spend a percentage of the Harvard Business Review. Great article. Anyway, thank you for your sharing, your participation. So when you're setting up your home office then, I think that there are 3 key principles. One, like you have said, around the point of friction is aesthetics, right? The nice plant. This is my home office right now. I've got my Michael Jordan poster right there. I've got a nice warm light. I've got a plant. I've moved the position of the plant. That's the aesthetics. And then the room has nice colored pillows and all this to make it seem inviting and fun. Makes a place that I want to be. And then the next one is productivity. Now, for each his own, what's going to help you be more productive? So for some of you, like you shared on the thing, maybe some music, maybe locking the door, maybe buying a lock for the door. For some of you, it's your secret lab chair, fancy chair. For me, I don't have a fancy chair, but I invested in a standing desk because I find that I'm sitting, do 1 hour of work, I get tired, I hit a button, boom, I'm standing, and suddenly it is more productive. I feel like a second wind of energy has just come. That helps me be productive. For me, the large screen really helps with productivity because I do a lot of PowerPoint, I do a lot of video work, and so a large screen means that I can have one window open for the PowerPoint, one window open for the Safari or Internet Explorer where I'm getting content from, one window open for another PowerPoint which I want to take reference from. It just makes no minimizing, no squinting, no finding stuff. It just makes things fast. And then the last one is again to each his own functionality. If you need a printer or a fax machine for some reason, then by all means make sure you have that in your home office. For me, functionality means I do a lot of webinars. So the standing desk was also a functionality requirement because I found that if I'm sitting and presenting, my energy is down, but now I'm standing and talking to you, it's a lot better. I also have invested in a good webcam because many of us, I didn't know until like a month ago that even though I have a pretty new computer, the computer's webcam is really lousy. I think computers weren't meant for great webcams. So I have to buy an external webcam to have good, so that you can see me clearly. I also, maybe I'll show you, because I do so many webinars and I need to get the right lighting, otherwise you're going to see me in a dark, dingy space. I also have a ring light that's shining on me over there, from there. Okay, with the Zoom background, it kind of gets messed up. But it depends on your job. Whatever your job is, figure out the functionality that you need. Those are the 3 principles when designing a home office, according to me. And I'm no authority on this. It's just I've been applying my mind and iterating about that. Now, some of us have to work at a dining table. This is my brother-in-law's dining table, and he has to work like that. His wife would work across him on the other end. But even then, they've done it in a nice way, to the best of their ability. He's got a nice mat. He's put in the nice screens. It works for him, and that means you probably have to negotiate with your family and kind of create the space for the inconvenience to them and say, look, can we for these couple of months, can we have lunch and dinner at the living area rather than the dining? when my brother-in-law's wife went back to work, he had liberty to just have one space for his table, for his stuff, and then the rest of the table was still for dining. So that kind of worked out for them. So to each his own. But interestingly, I mean, I don't need you to do this right now. I don't think the webinar function allows for you to turn on your camera anyway. But your home office is one thing, but everyone's office is also Zoom, right? Everyone's office is also Zoom. Zoom is your common corridor. Zoom is your conference room. Zoom is your client office. Zoom is everything. We need to also invest the time to make sure our Zoom experience for other people is great. So when you're free, turn on Zoom, open up your webcam, open up the video, double click on that tiny image of you and make yourself full screen. That's what people will be seeing you. That's how people will be seeing you. And then you're going to ask yourself, okay, if that's who you are, if that's how you're appearing, is it really dark? Is it dingy? You know, what's the impression you're creating for others? Because now Zoom and your appearance of Zoom is your fancy suit. Your appearance of Zoom is now whether that nice colored watch you're wearing. Your Zoom is now your brand. Your Zoom is now your dressing. And that creates an experience. So think about this, right? So you can just, you're familiar with the chat function. So what are your thoughts on this? Is this good? Is this bad? Is there something that needs to be tweaked here for this person who's on Zoom in this manner? Put it on the chat. What's good, bad, ugly about this current situation? If this was you, what would you think? Yeah, lighting to be improved, a little bit in the shadow. Distracting background, yeah, not sure what that is. Background is important, yeah, agree, Muthu. Add a virtual background, sure. Personally, I hate virtual backgrounds because you can see like my pixels moving around. I personally don't like that. But yeah, it helps sometimes. The issue here is the glare on the spectacles. So I wear specs, but I know I have a light there, so I don't want it to reflect into you and have that kind of glare. So I just take off my specs and present on Zoom. Okay, good. Next one. What's good or bad about this? So this guy suited up for the Zoom call. Actually, it's a TV interview. But the background is distracting, right? So he got his hair nice, he got his suit on, but he didn't tidy up his house. He didn't tidy up his living quarters. And it just has it seems like he was just fumbling around and rushing to the screen just in the nick of time. The lighting is an issue as well, because the lighting is behind him. The lighting should ideally be in front of you, casting light on your face so you look good. Now, the lighting is behind him. It's a bit of a shadow. It's not the best. And then I think you all know this one, right? We've all seen the memes. We've all seen the videos. I actually think he did great. Like, great setup. His body is in the center of the frame. He's making eye contact with the camera so often. Look, I'm teaching this class and I'm still struggling with the eye contact. I have to physically move my image of my picture into as high up close to my webcam as possible so that I seem to be making eye contact with you, but I get distracted. I look at my slide and you can tell I'm not making eye contact with you, right? But he's making pretty good eye contact. The office is nice. There's a nice world map in the background, looks very professional. And sometimes if your kids come into the room, it's authentic. I think your clients would understand, your colleagues would understand that, okay, it happens. I once had to teach a class with my child on my lap just because she wouldn't play with the Pomodoro timer. She wouldn't agree with anything. And people understand in this day and age, I think. And so when you are on a Zoom call, if I can give you one piece of advice, it's look directly at the webcam as much as possible. Elevate the computer so that they're not staring up at your nose. So imagine if my webcam was down, right? If my webcam was down and you're like staring up at my nose the whole time, looking at all my nostril hair, you wouldn't like it. I can't believe I just did that. I'm sorry. Hope I haven't revolted and caused you guys to vomit your dinner. Yeah, so you want to then just have it at a right angle so they're not looking at you from the below, your double chin or your nose hairs, and you have light coming from in front of you, so you're nicely lit. And now your face is in the center of the screen, you're making eye contact with them, it's much better. And there's another concept worth noting, and that is the idea of your Zoom real estate. Now, my colleague Ryan, my ex-colleague, he was just with us on a 1-year contract, but he was a very smart guy. He had this concept of your Zoom real estate. So the idea that you can create a brand for yourself by what's in the background. So for him, he's a young guy, fresh graduate. Wants students, wants colleagues to take him seriously. The books in the background suggest he's well read. Might be a smart guy. He's an architect by training. He's got a lot of design expertise, so he's showing that off nicely with the Lego, with his own artwork in the background, so that I kind of know what he stands for. He's also a company guy. He's got our office logo on his background. Interesting. I think it's quite a cool concept, your Zoom real estate. My ex-colleague from Heidrick, now he works for a consulting firm called Korn Ferry, also in the leadership consulting domain. He's in sales, right? He's a consultant, they got to sell. Business development is a big part of the game. But he's American, and he knows that in Asia sometimes there's two impressions of American. Some Asians defer to Americans, and sometimes they see Americans as just loud and maybe less backed by substance and more charisma. I don't think it's true. I think everyone can be smart. Everyone can be. Your nationality doesn't affect it. But he's got that chip on his shoulder. And he made it a point he's been in Singapore 30 years now, but he still has that chip that, people see him as a foreigner and as an American, and a loud American at that. So he curated his background with a bookshelf. Not as crazy as this, where it's so many books. He just has very subtle. Just a bookshelf. On the bookshelf, a photo of him and his family. His wife is Singaporean, the Asian wife, the daughter in Hague Girls School, so very localized. So he's trying to show, I'm localized. I've got a family here. Some very critical books, management books, business books around culture change, because he in his business, he does a lot of culture change work for organizations. Subtle messaging from the Zoom background. I thought that's quite important. I made this point to you guys about Zoom earlier. Your background, your webcam is probably pretty poor on your laptop. So if you're having an important meeting, if you need to be client-facing, invest in a proper webcam. Also, I was surprised to know the expensive Apple AirPods are really good on phone calls, but they're terrible on Zoom. And that's why I'm reverting to something with a wired mic. It'll be much better for your experience, I think. Anyway, I'll take a few minutes to jump to the Q&A. So which one has the most upvotes? Okay, how do we handle ad hoc meetings and tasks on WhatsApp? Okay, so I think that's about managing up and around. I'll come to that, and if it's still not answered, feel free to upvote some more. Okay, and Michelle, I'm a manager working part-time. Physically, I used to be in the office Monday through Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, because I work from home, my colleagues expect me to be accessible all the time because I'm at home anyway. Would you have any tips? It's just too much. Yeah, no, that's great. Are these your subordinates? Let's assume they are, right? So I really think the struggle you face working at home may be felt in similar ways by your colleagues. And I think having a really important discussion about what's expectable, not expectable, what's reasonable. If you don't want to say that, you know what, I'm overwhelmed, it's too much. Yeah, you don't say that. If you don't want to say that, your family or the other home distractions or home responsibilities, you don't have to say that either. But you can frame it around productivity. Hey guys, I've been doing my best to be as accessible to you as I can, but it's causing me to not be as productive as I hope. I've got a lot of work on my plate that I need to deliver, and I find that responding to WhatsApps or emails as they come in gets me very distracted, and I don't do the work I want to as well. So moving forward, if it's an emergency, please ping me on whatever channel, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's Skype, whatever. But if it's not an emergency, if you just need my point of view and you can wait a couple of hours, drop me an email or drop me a message on whatever platform. So you decide on the platforms, but make the thing heard. And you explain it, over the course of Circuit Breaker, I attended a few courses. and specifically on productivity. And I learned that, this is one way to make me more focused and do better work. So that's what I'm trying to do. I encourage all of you to do it as well. So moving forward, I will set 2 ways of communications. One, non-urgent work coming on email, I'll respond in a couple of hours, or respond in 4 hours, or respond within a day or two. For urgent stuff, you really need me, okay, ping me here. At the same time, if you just want to do an instant chat, my office hours are 2 to 4 every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then I'll take chat there. I think that also kind of addresses Fong Hong Chu's question about ad hoc meetings. I think that's something that we need to have that conversation. We need to set the boundaries and frame it not upon overwhelm. Don't have to frame it around family needs. You don't have to frame it around, and just frame it around productivity. People understand productivity. Okay. Is it rude to put virtual backgrounds? No, it's not rude. Especially if it's a nice, tasteful one. Sometimes if it's your company background, like this one I was asked to use, this one I think it's nice and tasteful. Yeah, great. There's some, of course, that like pixelate a lot depending on your lighting in your room. That may be a consideration. So if you have a nice, neat space behind you, a space that maybe sends a message about who you are without being too distracting, I think that might be better than the Zoom background sometimes, but there's nothing wrong with Zoom backgrounds. Yeah, so if you don't have the budget to invest in the equipment, great. So if your office is now working from home, there is redundant equipment at the office. Like in my office, my boss is quite forward thinking. She said, look, we're all working from home for the time being. If you need to bring home your monitor from the office, please feel free to do so. Just bring it back when you need it. Let our one person know. They will account for the movement of these things. That's something that you can share and discuss with your boss or your office manager. What was I going to say? Yeah, companies like LinkedIn have, they're less affected by COVID and the financial restraints, so they give a budget for people to invest in infrastructure, but you don't have to. There are cheaper alternatives for a lot of things. If you want to have a standing desk, there are these like add-ons where you just put a simple tray on your table and then you move to standing mode. That's like a cheap add-on. Most importantly, it's the principle. So you may not have to spend money, you may not want to spend money, but what's the principle of aesthetics? So if there's something that you like, are there photographs in your house that you can use and put in your table of your family that encourage you? Is there a poster that you can bring from another part of your house into this part of the house that's going to encourage you? If there's no equipment, no tech, no setup that you can do, okay, then I would say invest in the productivity habits, things like the Pomodoro method, things like chronotyping and chrono hacking, like planning your day according to your chronotype, using the Pareto principle, using task manager platforms. There are many free productivity hacks that you can leverage to increase your productivity, and that's a whole workshop in itself. Okay. Now, I've started a new role in a new company. How do I make a positive? Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. Fahid, can you share some sleep cycle management? Yeah, you know what? That's a great question, Fahid Riaz. I should have added this to the content of the workshop, but I didn't. Moving forward, I will. And there is a practice that I would encourage all of us to do to segregate work and home. So we talked about the startup ritual. We talked about the separate space to kind of distinguish and set a boundary between home life and work life. But there has to be an exit ritual as well. For me, I read on this book by Professor Teresa Amabile. She wrote a book called The Progress Principle. Great book. And in that book, she found that for motivation and mental health and productivity, one task at the end of each workday. And that task was to make a note, physically note down everything you achieved in this workday. So I would write, okay, prepared deck for this workshop, delivered workshop, sent participants some information. I would write, had meeting with so-and-so to discuss future programs, everything I achieved for this workday. I'll make a list of it. As I do that, three things happen. One, I would see what I may have thought was an unproductive day suddenly feels, oh wow, I've done quite a bit. I'm quite happy with myself. You pat yourself on the back. That's the progress control. You feel a sense of achievement. You reinforce that, and it raises your self-esteem. It also motivates you because in her research, she found that, yeah, factory workers who kept a diary of their daily work were more productive than factory workers who didn't keep a diary. Those who think that their work does, they're not achieving anything, they don't get as productive. If you see yourself making progress, you're motivated, your productivity increases. So that's not just a mental health thing, but also a productivity thing. To list down all your work done for the day, you look at it, you say, wow, I've done quite a bit. It's a lot more than I thought it was. You feel more motivated the next day. You see progress. It's like when you want to lose weight, right? You don't feel good when you look in the mirror, you see the same body. But when you start to see that, hey, you know what? I lost a pant size. Now you're suddenly more motivated to keep going. So it's like that. Progress creates motivation. But at the same time, progress also, by writing down what you've achieved for the day, another thing happens. You suddenly, oh, I didn't do this because that project, oh, I forgot to do that. I didn't reply that. Okay, great. If you have time, you can address it. If it's a 5-minute job, sure, address it straight away, get it out of your mind. But if it's not a 5-minute job, now's your chance to open up your Outlook or your calendar and schedule it. By scheduling this task, it is out of your mind. You take it out of the rumination. You give it a place that tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'm going to get to this. You no longer worry. You no longer have the anxiety of it not being done because you know that there's a plan. You've scheduled 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever time to do it tomorrow. It's addressed. It's handled. That way, when you do that, there's less chance of you're having a fun time with your kids. Your kids say one particular word, computer. You're like, oh, I didn't reply to so-and-so request for the additional computers. Oh, you don't have that thing because you've gone through your workday for the day. You've made a list of everything you've done. You've patted yourself on the back, but you've also had, oh no, I didn't do this. You've already scheduled it for tomorrow. So it doesn't have to ruminate in your mind the next day. So that's a nice ritual. Just leave work at work and separate from home. Then other rituals can be, maybe going for an evening run and whatnot, creating that distance. Okay, I'm just mindful of time. I don't want to run over. We are scheduled to end at 9, I believe, right? So I want to move ahead and I'll try and get some questions later. Okay. So the next one is about managing up and around, right? So I think these are some of the things you talked about. How do you manage your boss? How do you show professionalism? How do you make things work? How do you impress your colleagues? And so firstly, you're not just managing your colleagues and your boss, you're managing also your family. So you don't want to be distracted by them. You want to have an understanding with them. So it's about Sunday evenings, telling your family, this is my schedule. Mom, Dad, I'll take Grandpa to the clinic on this day because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I cannot. I've got meetings. Please don't get upset with me. You tell them in advance, they won't get upset with you. Your wife, partner, I'll pick up the kids on this day. I need you to pick up the kids on this day. You plan it all out in advance. Create that clarity. Align with your family. Because otherwise, if they see you at home, they think you're free, right? It's because you're home. But if you tell them that you're working from this time, this is what you're doing, they'll understand. They'll bother you less. Then, it comes to sharing with you and your partner, creating a care schedule, having a family roster. Today, I'm working at this time. I'm free at this time. There's always one parent free, right? To be with the kids. Okay, that might work out. Whatever you agree, you got to keep your word so that it doesn't undermine the trust in this arrangement between you, your family, your colleagues. Now, with your co-workers, I would suggest informing them on your working hours. So I've told my colleagues, look, generally 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. is when I'm working, unless exceptional situations. I share my calendar with the people I'm intimately working with so that they know what I'm doing. They can check on things if they need to know where I'm at and when they can bother me. And we align on our communication platform, when to talk. It's really, 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 I can't say this enough, having that conversation with people you work with so that there's no miscommunication. Because look, you are not the only one facing trouble. Unless you're saying this person is single, loner, robot, no emotional issues with being alone, and can work 24/7, fine. That's an exception. But I think given all the news, given all the stuff, if you talk about needing time to arrange for standardized communication platforms, collaboration norms, that, okay, I'll reply in a day, reply in 4 hours, whatever collaboration norm you have, and flexible hours. It's all part of the way of work these days. People will understand that, or you can frame it around productivity. And a big part about managing your colleagues is also living in accordance with what you've agreed upon. So that professionalism, right? So you don't want to give them doubt. So if you said you're going to be working from 9 to 6 or 6 to 3 or whatever it is, make sure you're online at that time. You might be busy, you might be away, but you're online. So that when they do message you, you don't reply straight away because you're working on a task, but an hour later when you're done with the task, you reply, right? In fact, just in case you, like, companies on the IT infrastructure can generate reports on who's online and who's not. So my ex-colleague, he got a report that, okay, you've not been on Skype since we rolled out Skype for Business. You've only been online 3 hours. Now he's working, he's hustling, but he just doesn't use Skype for Business. Luckily, his boss understands that, but they can generate this report, so just know that. Are you, especially for those who just started, you need to be proactive. So there are some questions about starting, right? You need to be proactive about what you want to do. So go to your boss, say, hey boss, look, these are my ideas. What do you think about them? Or, hey boss, I'm on this project. This is what I want to get done. What do you think? Because we have to appreciate that there's no more bumping into the corridor. There's no more walking into your boss's office. It requires proactivity on our part to go and initiate the Zoom call, say, hey, can I get half an hour at a time to get it done? Of course, simple things like being chased, whether it's remote work or whether it's physical work, we don't want to do that. The people need to chase you for updates, all that stuff, right? Because we're working remotely, it's about trust. All these things are no big deal in the office sometimes, but when you do it remote, when it's remote and they've got to chase you, it totally gives the impression that you're slacking, you know. So just really, professionalism is super important. But you know, what I would suggest is to create a rhythm with your boss. So if some of you are team leaders and you're the boss, I strongly suggest a daily scrum. If you are the kind that needs to be in constant update, you need team members to know what each other is doing, the daily scrum can be very helpful. And a daily scrum is very, very short. It's one person, at the most 1-2 minutes of sharing each. And it takes nothing more than 15 minutes. It's a standing meeting, but I guess if it's in the office, it's a standing meeting. But if it's not in the office, okay, fine. Everyone does it, whether they're standing or whatever, you can't control that. But 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? Is there anything in your way? So tomorrow, you're going to answer the same questions again. And if you don't deliver, when you update what you did yesterday, you don't deliver what you said you were going to deliver, they'll ask you why. Then you say, oh yeah, Jonathan didn't give me the deck. Okay, but you also were supposed to answer what's getting in your way. Meaning, what do you need to be successful? You need Jonathan to give you the deck. That's the time to align. It's very, very fast. If you're a boss, I strongly recommend this standing scrum to keep people's time short, but to create alignment quickly. If you are a subordinate and you can suggest this, by all means, please do. But another thing that we can do is schedule in your calendar periodical check-ins with different people that you need to be checking in with. So if it is colleagues, and I'll come to relationship building in a bit, but if it's like a boss that you're working with, if it's a colleague that you're on a project with, set periodical check-ins. Okay, every week we'll meet at Tuesday, 2 p.m. on Zoom. If it's your boss, weekly email update, 3-bullet technique. What is the 3-bullet technique? Okay, hi boss, few projects I'm working on, I want to give you an update. Project 1, blah, 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 blah. Okay, first you introduce the project, or if it's not a new project, just update status. Okay, we're on track, it's on target. The results we've achieved is this, and what I need from you is that. Or the next steps is that. But very short, very sweet. You don't give your boss a long 2-page email, just paragraph, each project 3 bullets, each project 3 bullets, quick updates. And that way, you know, this is about kind of getting into a bit of a cadence with your boss, a rhythm with your boss, where you are in a position to, where your boss and you know what the communication speed and frequency is. Where, okay, every 2 days we're going to have a daily scrum. Okay, that works. Or every 3 days I'm going to get an email update with the progress. Okay, that works. Same for colleagues that you're working on projects with. So not necessarily, so this isn't so much about building relationships. But if you're talking about building relationships now, so we're coming to E, right? So managing up and around. Building relationships now, I think there's three things, especially for those who are new COVID, new to the company. You wanna connect. Yeah, just because we're working online doesn't mean that we negate relationships. The fact still remains we need friends at work. There's so much literature that talks about how friendships increase productivity, friendships at work increase our sense of well-being, and there is unequivocal, unrefutable evidence now from many sources that relationships are the key to happiness. And at the same time, positive psychology again talks about happiness leading to productivity. Previously, people thought that if I was successful, then I'll be happy. But the equation is actually the wrong way. Happy people are more successful. There's a whole book called The Happiness Advantage. I strongly recommend that anyone interested in this topic go and read it, by Sean Aker. And going to B. Kuhn's question, positive psychology, yes, is a buzz these days. What are my thoughts? I think it's a buzz based on science. Positive psychology used to be used by elite athletes, senior leaders who had the money to spend on executive coaches that would teach them these psychological techniques. But now, because of the internet, because of the popularization of information, anyone has access to it. And there's so many books coming out. People are getting more confident to write different books. So much more literature. The field only came to prominence in the late 90s, early 2000s by Martin Seligman. And like any nascent field, there will be a time where it has that exponential growth. And for positive psychology, that's now, because there's enough critical mass of PhDs, researchers in that field. It's all based on evidence. It's all scientifically experimented and evidence-based. So you can check it out. But yeah, relationships. So how do we build relationships at work? If you're a new colleague, I would strongly suggest scheduling virtual coffees. Say, hey, play the new person card. Hey, I just joined. I just want to get to know you, learn more about what you're doing, and just try and make friends in the company, as hard as it may be during Zoom. During COVID and whatnot. So have the virtual coffees, and you just be proactive about it. Set a target. You know, if you were a fresh grad of mine going to the workplace, my advice would be, and if it wasn't COVID and all that, my advice would be, don't dine alone, right? You've heard that saying, never eat alone. I would say, look, set a target of having 2 new people that you meet for lunch every week, or 1 new person every week that you meet for lunch that you haven't had lunch with before. In the early days of your career, it's about networking, building relationships. Relationships are key to opening doors, being brought onto projects, getting talked about at the boardroom meetings when your bosses are discussing promotion. Relationships are key. Virtual coffees. It doesn't matter whether they're junior to you, whether they're higher to you, whether they're subordinate, whether they're a team member. Say, I'm new. I want to get to know you. I want to understand the work you're doing and see how I can contribute. People appreciate that. Do it. Now, if you're there a bit longer, this is the time to create online activity clubs. So I've heard about companies doing book clubs, not companies, but departments and teams doing book clubs. I've heard about TED clubs. So everyone has a list of TED videos. This week we're going to discuss this TED topic. Friday, 4:30. We are everyone go and get your own coffee, get your own cocktail, whatever it is, whatever your flavor is, and we're going to discuss the TED. And some bosses are cool. You have just let your boss know we're going to do this. You invite the boss along. It'll be fun. What I've also seen is that officers like to celebrate goodbyes, and it's lovely, right? We say goodbye to somebody, you want to make it nice and farewell, and we've done a few Zoom farewells to some colleagues. But I think it'll be even better if we celebrate anniversaries. So rather than people leaving and then we give them a dinner or whatever, we should do like celebrations for anniversaries. So if you've been in the company longer, create a ritual for house party for anyone who's having a 1-year anniversary of the workplace or birthday. House party is the app, right? It has like quizzes and games, and it's all informal. And they say, okay, guys, let's do it. We're gonna have a house party gathering or whatever, Zoom gathering, and someone facilitate it. So have a game, have a breakout room where you discuss stuff or whatever, right? There's so many fun things you can do, but we need to be proactive. So if you're new, focus on the virtual coffees to build relationships that way. If you are more senior, you've been there for a while, you lead the way. You be the culture change man. You be the culture carrier. You create the bonds in this way. People will appreciate, and you will go far further with your relationships and your networks in the office. Now, previously we used to have water cooler conversations. Now Now the new water cooler conversation is happening on Zoom in that 3 minutes, 5 minutes before the actual meeting starts. Especially, okay, it doesn't happen in the big meetings, but if it's like a 2-person meeting or 4-person meeting, you've got that 5 minutes before people want to get into movement. That's the time for you to just say, hey, John, great to see you here. It's been so long. How have you been? How are the kids? You know, and I didn't think of this, but 2 colleagues did it with me. And I was just blown away. I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. Like one colleague was like, hey, Jess, it's been a long time. How's your daughter? How's your son? And then I answered, I said, what about you? And she's like, yeah, my son is now 8 months. I'm like, what? I didn't even, I knew she was on maternity last year. I forgot. And wow, your son is really 8 months. And just connected. And then another colleague, we were working on a project and she's just like, okay, just started off with, how are you? What's your day? What's your day has been like? And I just felt, wow, that's just really nice. We're not actually close friends, but she just started that way. And she was genuinely interested. She paused, she asked, she sat back in her chair. She was waiting for an answer. She wasn't just ready to move on. And that to me was like, wow, now I look forward to meeting with her on that project because it's going to be a connection. It goes a long way. We got to, and I hope that I answered the questions that some of you had asked about relationship building, being new to the office. Yeah. Okay. And I would like to encourage you to develop collaboration norms with your teams. Yeah, in the interest of time, I won't play this video, but I will share it with you after the class. But the idea here is that, now that we're on Zoom, now that we are virtual, meetings have got to change. Collaboration has got to change. We can't send long meetings. Meetings need to be short. So if you're the boss, minimize the agenda. You need to invest in making sure everyone knows how much time they have to update so that people's attentions are kept. We also need to be mindful that every email we send, every text message we put, every IM is equal to walking through someone's door. Think about it. If this was an office, you'd be walking in that door every time you send a message. Would you do that? Would you interrupt a person who is head down in work, walking into the office all the time? If you won't, then maybe you want to take a different strategy. Maybe it is every 3 hours, you're going to compile. Every time you have a question for your boss, you compile it on a paper. Every time you have a question for a subordinate, you compile it on a paper. And then periodically, you send them one email with the 5 questions. Right? So, yeah. Now, the last one in terms of engaging others is your clients, your partners. So with colleagues, we've talked about being proactive, doing the virtual Zooms and all that, playing the new colleague card or playing, hey, let's catch up card. I think it's quite common these days. But if you want to be, if you're client facing, you've got relationships to manage, what can you do? I would strongly suggest, now's your time to engage on social. So if they're on LinkedIn, you might want to write a post, tag them, ask them for their point of view. If they've said something online, comment on their post, be in the mind share. When you do have a chat with them on the phone, make sure your webcam is on, make sure, I don't think I need to tell you guys these because you guys are professionals, but when I work with students, the students refuse to have their webcams on. So this platform with the webinar format, we can't do the webcams on, but we do a lot of meetings with students and they refuse to put their webcam. They're so shy. But I'm like, if you want to build relationships, you want people to remember you, have your webcam on. You can't meet your clients as well, but you want to be on their mind share, use LinkedIn, do microblogging. What is microblogging? Every time you read a good article, put your own thoughts about the article, summarize what's useful about the article alongside before you share it. And if you tag someone that would be interested in this knowledge, not only do they see the article that you're tagging them on, their entire network on LinkedIn also sees that you've had a thought about this, you've got a point of view on this. And suddenly, if you do this more and more, you become a bit of a thought leader on this area. This is different from writing your own thought leadership articles and making a video, which you can do. But a simpler way is to just read an existing article, put your 2 cents worth there, and share that. That becomes a nice little microblog. And there was somebody that wanted to get my point of view on something from another university, and so I said, sure. We had a Zoom coffee, and after the Zoom coffee, she sent me a Starbucks gift voucher, $10 or $15, I don't know what it was, I didn't expect it, but it was such a memorable way of saying thank you. Like, I didn't expect to get a, like she said, I wanted to, like, this is before, so we organized a meeting before COVID, and we were going to meet for coffee. And she's like, oh, well, we can't meet for coffee, but here's a coffee on me. And it's just a nice way to say thank you. And I think these little things make you remember the person. It's ways to occupy share mind space, so that your colleagues, so that your partners don't forget you. Yeah, so these are simple ways to do that. Now, look, I understand it's 9 o'clock, and I really apologize for running over. But Kenneth, I'll take your direction here in terms of timing. Do you want me to take the questions? I'll be more than happy to stay for as long as you want me to answer the questions on the chat. How should we do this? Alternatively, if you need to leave, I guess if anyone needs to leave at 9 right now, I mean, no offense will be taken. We appreciate you being here. But just to kind of sum up for today, what I would love is if we can, okay, Kenneth says that I can go until 9:30 just to answer questions. So I'll look, if you need to leave, it's 9 o'clock. I know we scheduled this till 9, and I apologize. I didn't expect so many good questions. Thank you for that. But before any of you leave, please drop your thoughts to this right here. What are your 3 insights from today's session? And that'll be on the word cloud again. It'll be a great way for us to kind of summarize and do an active recall. Active recall is a great study technique. I know you're not students, but active recall is a good way to remember stuff and to solidify our learnings. So I'm going to put the QR code up again. Oh, you can see the QR code, right? So once you see the QR code, just scan it, go back to the same Mentimeter account, and start contributing your thoughts to what are your 3 insights or takeaways from this session. I'll challenge you to keep each takeaway to 1 word. Or 1 short phrase, as short as you can, and then the word cloud will be nicely populated. Okay, so if you have trouble with the QR code, I'm going to put the link on the chat. And now I'm going to flip over to the word cloud as it is forming, so that you can see what everyone else has learned from this session, just by way of a quick summary. So I talked about the home technique, getting your head in the game, optimizing your office space, managing up and around, engaging your colleagues, engaging your clients, engaging your partners, engaging your network. So let's see what everyone is saying. So engagement is a big deal. So being proactive about your engagement, designing your environment. I'm seeing words like productivity come up bigger and bigger. Okay. I'm seeing friction. Yeah, we talked about reducing friction for the things you want to do, increasing frictions for the things that you don't want to do. I'm seeing thought leadership. Yeah, so that's the recency effect playing in. Where we just talked about producing some thought leadership articles for people. Environment, connecting with others, importance of a background, having a plan, Zoom real estate. What else? Environment, balance, virtual coffees, proactiveness, midpoint. The dips. We talked about the dip, the chronotyping and the chrono hacking. Habit formation. Okay, so keep this coming. I'll do a screenshot of this and then I'll share it with you I'll share it with you through the email that Kenneth will send to all of you. But thank you very much. So I think Kenneth will have to just do a formal closing now that it's 9. But I think after the formal closing, those of you who want to stay, I will answer the rest of the questions as best as I can that are on the Q&A platform, and you can continue to post questions there. And so, Kenneth, over to you. I will address the questions till 9:30 after you are done.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, for the useful tips. A big thank you to all our participants for joining us today. We hope that you have enjoyed the session and, more importantly, learned something useful. We would greatly appreciate it if you could give us your feedback via the QR code or web link shown on the screen. This will help us understand your needs so that we may enhance our programs and activities to better serve you. Do like and follow us on the NUS Alumni Facebook page, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and subscribe to our WhatsApp broadcast to stay informed of upcoming alumni events and latest updates. We will leave the webinar open until 9:30 p.m. for Mr. Sting to answer any remaining questions. Thank you for your support and good night.
Actually, a lot of you asking about the resources. I have actually made videos on a lot of these topics myself. Let me just give you the link to that channel. Then all the things about chronotyping, about setting up your office, about Pomodoro technique. Yeah, so let me just send you the YouTube channel directly. Okay, so I'm putting it in the chat for everybody. Oops, that's the wrong link. Okay, there you go. So if you want to watch the videos there that where I've talked about setting up your home office, work from home techniques, it's all over there. So you can do that at your own time. But let me now just go over to the Q&A. All right, so the one with the most upvotes, Guan Min pick. I now work longer hours because I don't need to travel to and from office. Traveling hours are now also my working hours. How do I manage working hours? Yeah, I think, Lawrence put a comment there that bosses can be trained. I agree, colleagues can also be trained. And I think most importantly, we need to train ourselves to set boundaries. So one thing we got to do our best to increase our productivity. So following the different productivity techniques on YouTube and implementing some of them for yourself, it'll be a great start to be more efficient. But then also being clear about what's important and what's not. People will bother us, people will ping us, but is that really going to drive your results? What is the one thing? What is the 20%? What is the 50% that are the important ones? And focus on those. Everything else comes at your time. And I think going a step back, part of what's keeping us busy is because we keep working according to other people's time. We check our email every hour, every half an hour. It's on all the time. And if we operate that way, we are working according to other people's to-do lists. If we decide to work according to our to-do list, we'll say, okay, I'm going to check my email at this time and this time, but the rest of the time I'm blocking for my important work. Then, yes, there are exigencies where things come up. But generally, you should be able to predict, according to your project, when people need you. You should be able to predict, okay, when there'll be questions. Now, yes, there are times where things are on the fly, you're collaborative, I understand that. That's where it's important to set the boundaries on when you're busy, when you're not. And you have to filter. If it's your boss needs you to reply quickly, she has a pattern of demanding fast replies, fine, you might need to reply, but don't make it a habit of doing it every moment, because then they're going to expect it. Maybe half an hour, maybe 1 hour. You have to train people to know how to work well with you. Another way to manage working hours is to set other commitments. So if you have a family, if you have friends, if you have a course you want to do, block the time for that. If you have something to go to, like an online course, like an online meetup, like a family thing, like a community service thing, if you have something scheduled, you are more likely to protect it. And if you don't have anything scheduled, you have no goals for the after work hours, you will just go where somebody else needs you. So having your own goals will help with that. Hope I answered that question, Guan Ming, and anyone else who asked for that one. Anonymous attendee. As a new employee onboarding during COVID-19, how do I stay proactive and productive without seeming overzealous? Yeah, so I think playing the new person card to ask for meetups, 1 or 2 every week is fine. Sorry, I got distracted there because Sukhan Lee gave a point about how Atomic Habits is now 30% off on Book Depository. Good for it. But yeah, you don't want to seem overzealous by being too proactive about meeting up. So with each person, don't do it more than once a week. You do 1 week Jonathan, 1 week David, 1 week Tabitha, 1 week Shirling, and then you can repeat the cycle 2 months later. So with each person, how much you engage them. with your boss, you know your boss is busy, so the periodical updates can be once a week. If there's active projects that need quick information on, then it can be once every 2 weeks or twice every week. You have to make the call. Boon Wong, unlike in the office where we get to meet at the pantry or colleagues, there isn't at home. Good to create the time slots and break. I think that's a comment, right? Yeah, good to create the time slots and breaks for something at home. I fully agree. Like I shared around the point about engaging others, managing others, creating the time for, hey guys, let's just have a catch up, facilitate a discussion. Everyone's going to share what's been going on for you, what's one win you achieved, what's one thing you're struggling with. Everyone just take turns to share in a group of 4 or 5 friends, colleagues. It'll be really healthy. To the person who said, I've just started a new role in a new company, how do I make a positive impression with my team and boss? I run this workshop called Your First 90 Days for the undergrads. If you want to attend it, let me know. My email address is here. I'll give you the attendance details. It's an anonymous question, so I'm putting my email in the chat platform. So if you want to reach out to me to attend that, by all means, please do. It's the first 90 days. It specifically talks about how you can make a good impression in a new role. Yeah, so the person who asked the question about standing table at the end of this workshop, it's on one of my YouTube videos where I talk about where I talk about setting up your home office. So I have a standing table recommendation there. So there was one of you who asked about standing table. Mei Wong, how to do a backup plan for Zoom webinars in case of technical issues. So I've been lucky. I think the NUS infrastructure is pretty good. It's been working quite nicely. But when we were first starting it out, and I would register participants for workshops, I would include in the meeting invite or the registration invite that if there is a problem with Zoom, I will activate a Skype meeting link and send it to you within 5 minutes. So I told them that if the call couldn't go through, if the webinar couldn't go through online, there will be a 5-minute contingency or 10-minute contingency where a new link will be activated on a different platform, such as Skype or Teams, so they can have that ready just in case. That's what we used to do at the start before we got comfortable with Zoom. Bernard, thank you for making the point about turning on the webcam. I work with 26 other colleagues, and many of my junior colleagues do not turn on the webcam. I make it a point to turn on mine. To me, it's about respect to others. Yeah, I fully agree, Bernard. It's just nice to see each other. It's also a sense of presence in the meeting. It's like, imagine doing a meeting in a conference room and everyone has their face behind a laptop. It's a bit disengaged. It's a bit, I find it a bit disrespectful. I think having your webcam on and being fully engaged, looking in the camera rather than multitasking. It's obvious when we multitask, right? On a Zoom call. I fully agree with it. Hong Chu, curious question. Do you still find using a paper notebook productive? So I'm a bit of I love tech and I do my best to be paperless. That is why in my standing desk, I have no drawers. I do my best to be paperless, but sometimes I like now I have a notebook right here. I usually make all my notes on the app called Notability on my iPad, and I write it down on the pencil. I think they have an Android one as well, and you can use any tablet to scribble. But I do sometimes like the tactile feeling of pen and paper. So sometimes when I'm a bit stressed, I will use a notebook just because it's a bit cathartic. Hong Chu. Okay. How do I propagate the team culture or company culture to my new team member that joined? I think culture cannot be thought. Culture is seen and felt and heard. And it's really up to, well, if it's truly the culture, then as all you can tell the person is to attend different events within the company, whether it's online events or whether it's physical events, and have different virtual meetings with the different employees. And through that, in the projects, they will communicate. Now, I think the broader question is having alignment with your top team as to what culture you want to create. What are visible behaviors that demonstrate the culture? What are visible behaviors that go against that culture? There are symbols of culture. For example, in the past, one big symbol was the removal of executive parking lots. Another big symbol was the move to open office and removal of private offices for partners in certain law firms. There are symbols of culture, there are behaviors of culture, and it's not how you teach the new joiner, but in my opinion, from my consulting work in the past, the culture piece is really about the way of being of everybody else. And so I think it starts with the top, right? The top need to demonstrate a culture of whatever it is you want to create, whether it's a culture of challenging ideas, whether it's a culture of speaking up. Then the top needs to recognize what are the symbols that will make people feel safe to and have that psychological safety to challenge ideas. What are the symbols, such as maybe clapping or applauding a good point of view, or sending an email about how one subordinate asked, or one new joiner asked a question and highlighting that, or rewarding people for that. What are the symbols? What are the behavioral actions that demonstrate this culture? And what are the things that go against it? Having alignment on that is very important with the top team. From my experience, what are the big differences in challenges for senior managers versus new entry into the workforce? Wow, I've not been consulting for the last 3 years, so I haven't really had much exposure to the senior management. I don't want to speak about what their challenges may be. I don't want to sound superficial. I think there is some, and I don't think this is an issue anymore. I think when things first went online, maybe some of the elder, more longer serving colleagues may have taken some time to get used to the tech and the Zoom and all that stuff. But I think it's been 2 months. Everyone is pretty comfortable with it. Maybe it's about learning and embracing the way things are to be done. Because I'm still hearing some colleagues say, I can't wait to go back to the office. I'm hearing, not colleagues, some friends and all say, I can't wait to go back to the office. I don't do Zoom meetings with clients very well. I'm sorry, we have to. We have to embrace that this is the way forward. So it's not about senior or junior, it's about growth mindset or fixed mindset. I don't think we can draw a fair line between senior colleagues and junior colleagues in this matter. I think it's really about mindset of people. If you have a growth mindset, okay, embrace that. Now your consulting gigs, your client meetings, your sales are going to be on Zoom. Don't tell me you're not effective on Zoom, because then your job now has changed to be effective on Zoom. Yeah, that's just my point of view. I know it's not really answering your question directly, but yeah. Yu Kwan. I run a monthly global team call, and I now do request my team to turn on the webcams. Great. Now that everyone can see everyone else, how can I encourage more of them to speak up and share their views? I think if you are running the global team call, I'm guessing there are a few other seniors there as well, and there are a few other regular folks who speak up often, and then the rest, maybe the 80% don't. I think there needs to be some alignment with you and the more senior folks to create space for speaking up. And there is going to be awkward silences as you create space. So if you find yourself rushing to answer a question or to fill a void in the sound system, like no one is saying anything, you want to say something, hold back and say, guys, look, I have a habit of speaking up a lot. It comes with the time that I've been in this job and my seniority maybe, but I want to change that. And so I'm going to hesitate to fill in the void. So someone raised a good point. I'm going to keep quiet and I want to wait for somebody to answer. And you will find in the first 3-4 meetings that will be awkward. There'll be people who do not speak up. You might even be silent for a while. And you say, okay, today I waited 30 minutes or 5 minutes and there was no one say. But you got to have that audacity to keep silent if you really want people to speak up. Today I waited 5 minutes and no one said anything. Okay. In the next meeting, I hope that it's less than 5 minutes before somebody speaks up after me. There has to be that kind of courage to allow for that awkward silence. That's one. If it's really a problem where no one wants to speak up. But then if it's something just about, maybe it's about psychological safety, what is the reaction when somebody speaks up? Is it fake and, yeah, well done? No, that's a bit too fake, right? That's inauthentic. They also don't feel comfortable. But when somebody speaks up, what is your reaction? Are you going to criticize the person? Do your senior colleagues criticize the idea and say, oh, that's a bad idea, we've done it before? Is that creating psychological safety? That's one thing. And if you've got to look at the behaviors in the last meetings, are the behaviors reinforcing psychological safety? Are the behaviors not reinforcing it, making it unsafe? Criticisms, rolled eyes, aggressive tones, that makes it unsafe. Another, and now the third way to resolve this issue is to avoid the diffusion of responsibility. Diffusion of responsibility, right? When there's so many people, no one wants to take ownership. And having assigned people different roles. So, all right, prior to this meeting, so-and-so, you're going to share about this, but you can also assign, I guess if it's a global call, maybe you can't, but if it's a smaller team meeting, you can assign, okay, John, today you are the devil's advocate. I want to hear your point of view. And when John devil's advocate and advocates according to his duties of being a devil advocate, that's going to spur more discussion. And then you have to name call. Okay, John, David, what do you think about that? Now, look, I don't think I've answered your question in giving you one or two great tips. I've tried to address it with 3 suggestions. It's a give and take, and I think it's a difficult one. How do you encourage people to speak up? But I think it is empowering them to feel confident that this is a safe space. It's not going to be held against them, and that you will reward people who speak up in meetings by giving them opportunities on projects, giving them recognition for their ideas, and that you appreciate that it's going to generate a better outcome for the team. And so you got to make that known. Not by words, but by actions. Okay, this is just really my point of view. I don't think I'm not an expert in this, yeah? Any suggestions for people who unfortunately, whose work can only be done in the office, but were asked to work from home, as your company is not an essential service, such as lab workers? Look, yeah, do I have a suggestion on that? No, not directly, because if it's a lab work and you can't do it in the lab, I don't know how to help you with that, but I'm then ask you, what else can you do to make your time valuable for this job? Maybe you can help with other work that can be done from home that your colleagues might be doing, and offer your intellect, your time there. If your work really can't be done, maybe your work can be done. Maybe you can do planning work. Maybe you can do research work that will make your lab work or other work better in the future. Maybe you can take the time for training. If you're an electrical engineer, if you're a technician, maybe you can learn different softwares that can get you employed by different companies. At the same time, this problem of COVID has created vacuums in new roles to be filled. Can you figure out what they may be in your company? So some people are doing Zoom trainings for colleagues to have effective sales meetings. Some people are doing, how do you handle clients and how do you train the doctors to see non-essential patients on Zoom? Some people are doing things like exercise on Zoom. So in your company, or maybe even in HR, they would do things like facilitate onboarding on Zoom. Can you figure out where these new knowledge need to be created and then use your time to learn that and then contribute to your team? I'm just trying to find, while you can't do your work, can you find other ways to contribute to the team in the office? That's just how I would approach it. Or 2, how can you then learn, upskill yourself? What else? Viswanath, I don't understand your question. How to handle Sebastians during the meeting? I don't get that one. Is it inappropriate to request sharing calendars with your colleagues? Yeah, it might be, depending on the culture of the firm. Now, typically, it's a work calendar, so okay, it might be, but I think in most firms it's okay, because you should educate your colleague about this, that they have different settings of what they share. They can share everything, even giving editorial rights. They can share visibility to everything. What are your appointments? or they can simply share when you're busy and when you're not busy. So it's these blocks of time that are open and closed. And giving them that choice to share what they want, what's open, what's closed, is a lot safer than let me see your whole calendar. It really depends on the company culture, but I don't think it's inappropriate. Noreen, share ideas about a boss who works remotely but doesn't communicate much. Great. I think that's a great one. And that's just having yourself create the cadence. So you taking the proactivity to do the 3 bullet updates, you suggesting, hey boss, can I get a couple of hours, can I get half an hour of your time to have a Zoom call every couple of weeks? Or maybe you don't have to give them the commitment of every couple of weeks, just do it as and when you need it and give them about a few days notice to schedule it. Just being proactive, and you explain, I need to speak to you so that I can make progress on X, Y, and Z. I need to speak to you so that I can give you an update on some of the challenges I'm having. Michelle, oh, okay, thank you very much for your kind words. Wing Leong. Yeah, I think, it's the same, right? Wing Leong, chairman or boss, chairman of a society or boss, the principles are the same, but I guess as a chairman of a society or association, I think you are working not with employees, but with volunteers a lot of the time. So again, you need to be more respectful of their timing. But the main principles about understanding that everyone has different hours of availability and engagement strategies are the same. Having that willingness to communicate about when they can bother you, when they shouldn't bother you is also very important. I'm a night owl and it does not doesn't fit our usual working hours. Should I change my sleeping hours? Look, if you're going to work in an office and everyone's working 9 to 6, yes, I would say yes. If you are working alone, you're a designer, maybe you don't have to collaborate that much. You just have to have meetings with clients every time, and you can schedule that according to your convenience. Then maybe no. It really depends on what people around you need. At the end of the day, it's about effectiveness, not about being right. So being right means, okay, I'm a night owl, I'm going to do my best, and I'm only going to work at night. But being effective is also a factor of who you're working with, right? So your colleagues might need you, your clients might need you, and so then you might need to change, especially if you have a rule in the company that we start at 9. If it's COVID and you're really if you're a journalist and you can just send your articles by the deadline, no one's going to bother you, sure, work at night if that's what you enjoy. Yeah. Boon Wong. Yes, I have a good table microphone to recommend. It's called the Audio-Technica ATR 2500X. The reason why I recommend it is because it's not crazy. It's $150. It's not crazy expensive. The sound quality is very good, but I don't use it myself because it's an additional 2 wires on my desk, which I don't want. Remember I said aesthetics, productivity, functionality, and aesthetics is important to me. I didn't want 2 more wires on my desk. Yeah, so we addressed the chairman question by Leong. Last one, just curious, do you think employers will be more open to remote work post-COVID? Yes, I think so. If you and your colleagues prove to be productive during COVID. Okay, in NUS, yeah, the management has talked about the future of work and how remote work is a key part of that. It shows that they are definitely very forward thinking and they're embracing the trends. The tech companies definitely. I don't know, I haven't seen much in the news about the civil service and whatnot, but I think it'll be a lot of times boss dependent. Some civil servants have bosses who are very liberal, some don't, but it all stems from us. If we can show ourselves to be productive in this time, effective in this time, without compromise, then I don't see why not. Okay, it's 9:29. I've got the last question right in the nick of time. For the half of you that stayed on, 75 of you that stayed on to listen to the answers, I hope I answered your questions. Thank you so much for asking them. I have put my email address in the chat. Otherwise, yeah, I'm putting it here again. Just read at nus.edu, or you can look me up at LinkedIn or on Instagram at the Spears Workshop. That's my Instagram handle. And I've also shared the YouTube link if you're interested in the content I have over there. Otherwise, thank you all very much. It was great seeing you, and I hope to stay in touch. Take care. Over to you, Kenneth.
All right, thanks, Jasper. Okay, we will be closing the webinar now. Thank you all for attending once again. And thank you again, Jasper, for his insightful talk.
You're welcome.
Good night.
It was my pleasure. Bye.